Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always excited to dive in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Today, we're going cellular, zooming in on this tiny molecule, molecular hydrogen, or H2,
H2s, yep.
and its intriguing relationship with, well, the powerhouses of our cells, the mitochondria.
Yeah.
You sent over some really fascinating research on this. Some of it pretty technical.
It can get pretty dense sometimes.
It can, but that's what we're here for.
To unpack it all and really get into how this H2 interacts with our biology.
Exactly. Break it down. Make it make sense.
Absolutely. So to kick things off, I think what's really grabbed the scientific spotlight is that H2,
It's interesting, right?
it is, because for a long time it was considered, what, biologically inert?
Yeah, pretty much. Just kind of hanging out, not doing much.
But then 2007 rolled around, and boom, scientists discovered it could actually protect the brain from damage.
That was a game changer, yeah. That 2007 study really sparked a wave of research.
It did, and it hasn't stopped. Over 2,000 studies now.
Oh, yeah, at least that. And more than 100 clinical trials investigating its effects on, well, it seems like everything. Inflammation, cancer.
The list goes on and on. Aging, metabolic disorders, you name it.
So H2 went from this, like, wallflower molecule to a potential cellular superhero.
I like that analogy. It really captures the shift in thinking.
But how does this tiny molecule, I mean, something we mostly associate with, like high school chemistry, have such a profound impact?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, the story has kind of unfolded in chapters.
Yeah.
Initially, the main focus was on H2's antioxidant properties.
Right, neutralizing those pesky free radicals.
Exactly. But as research progressed, we started to realize, wait a minute,
There's more to it.
there's more to it. It's not just about mopping up free radicals. H2 seems to be involved in far more complex cellular processes.
And this is where the mitochondria come in.
You got it, particularly within the mitochondria.
Okay, so let's dive into those complexities. Now, for our listeners who might need a quick refresher,
Mitochondria 101.
exactly what are they and why should we care about them so much?
Well, mitochondria are often called the powerhouses of the cell.
We've all heard that phrase.
We have, and for good reason. I mean, they are responsible for producing ATP,
ATP, right?
which is like the primary energy currency of our cells.
Yeah.
It fuels pretty much every cellular process you can think of.
So no ATP, no energy, no life.
Essentially, yeah. Without efficient, well-functioning mitochondria, our cells simply can't do their jobs.
So if there's a problem with these powerhouses,
Whoa.
it's going to have a ripple effect throughout the whole body, right?
Exactly. You can think of it like if our cells are like tiny cities,
I like that.
the mitochondria are the power plants.
Mm.
When those power plants go offline, the whole city, or the cell in this case, starts to suffer.
And that's where H2 steps in.
It seems so, and this is what's really fascinating. There's mounting evidence that H2 can actually improve mitochondrial function.
Right.
Yeah, especially when they're under stress. We're seeing things like increased ATP production, enhanced respiration, even protection from damage.
Whoa, so it's like H2 is almost like a support system for our mitochondria,
You could say that.
helping them work more efficiently. That's pretty incredible for a molecule once thought to be, well, inactive in our bodies.
It is pretty remarkable, and the specifics of how H2 achieves this are incredibly intriguing.
Lay it on me.
Well, for instance, research suggests H2 might enhance this process called mitophagy.
Mitophagy. Now that sounds familiar.
It's essentially the cell's quality control system for mitochondria, getting rid of damaged ones to maintain overall health.
So like taking out the cellular trash.
Exactly. Making sure everything is running smoothly.
That's a pretty important job.
Absolutely crucial. But it goes beyond just cleaning up. H2 also seems to play a role in regulating.
Regulating.
Yeah. The dynamic processes of mitochondrial, fusion and fission.
Fusion and fission, right? So how they join together and divide.
Exactly. And this constant reshaping, it's crucial for maintaining their overall health, their function.
Loving things in balance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And H2 appears to be involved in, like, fine-tuning these processes.
So we're seeing that H2 has these, like, fascinating, almost protective effects on the mitochondria.
Yeah, there's definitely a protective element there.
But some of the research you sent over delves into an even more mind-boggling concept.
Mm.
This idea that mitochondria might actually be able to produce H2 themselves.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
That's right.
It really is. It's still early days in the research, but it's definitely turning heads in the scientific community. For years, the focus has been on, delivering H2 to the body.
Through like inhalation or hydrogen water.
Exactly, things like that. But this idea that our cells might have a built-in mechanism for generating their own supply of H2,
A whole new ball game.
it really changes how we think about H2 and its role in our biology.
I can see why that's so intriguing. But how is that even possible? Where would this H2 be coming from within the mitochondria?
Well, it seems to be linked to, the remarkable adaptability of mitochondria. They've evolved to function even in low oxygen environments.
Hypoxia.
That's it, hypoxia. And under these specific conditions, research has shown that mitochondria, at least in plants,
So, like, okay.
begin to produce H2.
So when oxygen is scarce, they kind of shift gears and start making H2.
It seems that way.
What's the purpose of that? What are they doing with it?
That's one of the million-dollar questions. Researchers are still trying to piece together the whole puzzle. It seems to be a byproduct of this process called reverse electron transport, which is triggered by a buildup of a molecule called succinate.
Succinate. Now that rings a bell. Isn't that part of the Krebs cycle?
You got it. The Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle, it's central to how mitochondria generate energy.
Right, that essential metabolic pathway.
Exactly, and succinate is one of the key molecules involved.
Okay, so hypoxia leads to a buildup of succinate, which then triggers this reverse electron transport.
And somehow H2 emerges from this process.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is, and we're still mapping out all the intricate details, but it seems to involve this fascinating link between mitochondrial complex I,
Complex I, that's involved in electron transport, right?
right, and a group of enzymes called hydrogenases.
Hydrogenases. I remember reading that those are the enzymes bacteria use to make H2. Are you suggesting our mitochondria might have something similar?
The evidence is definitely pointing in that direction, and it's not as far-fetched as it might sound. Structural studies have actually revealed these remarkable similarities between complex I and a specific type of hydrogenase found in certain bacteria. They even share some common evolutionary ancestry.
So given that mitochondria evolved from ancient bacteria, it's not totally out there to think they might have held on to some of this H2 producing capability.
Exactly. It's like a little evolutionary echo. And it opens up all sorts of possibilities. If we can figure out how to stimulate this, endogenous H2 production,
From within.
right, it could really change how we approach H2 therapy.
It's incredible to think we could have this natural source of H2 right within our cells.
Right.
But you mentioned that the research is more speculative when it comes to animals.
Yeah.
Has anyone actually observed mitochondria making H2 in, animals?
It's much less established in animals, I have
Okay.
to admit that. But there was this really interesting study back in the 1960s that reported hydrogenase activity in developing frog embryos.
Like embryos, huh?
Yeah, so the potential's there, but it's definitely an area that needs more research.
It's like we've been so focused on delivering H2 from the outside that we might have completely missed this incredible internal source.
Hmm.
Why hasn't there been more research into this?
I think for a long time, the prevailing view was that H2 was just an inert gas.
Not doing much.
Exactly. The idea that our cells might be producing it wasn't even on the radar.
Hmm.
But as we're learning more about,
Multifaceted roles of H2.
yes,
Yeah.
this area of research is starting to gain some traction.
It's really challenging our assumptions about H2 and its role in biology. It's
Right.
like we're uncovering this whole new layer of complexity within our cells.
Absolutely. And there's still so much we don't know.
Right.
To solve this H2 production puzzle, we need to pinpoint the specific mechanisms, the enzymes involved, figure out what triggers and regulates the process.
And what its purpose is.
Exactly. What's its physiological role?
So many questions. Does this H2 stay within the mitochondria, or does it venture out into the cell?
Good questions.
And if so, what does it do there?
Right. What's its function outside the mitochondria? Those are all critical questions that future research needs to address. We also need to determine if this H2 production is happening in all cell types.
Or just specific ones?
Exactly. And of course, the big question, can we find ways to boost this natural H2 production for therapeutic benefit?
It's like opening up a whole new frontier in H2 research. It's amazing how this one tiny molecule, H2,
I know.
can hold so many mysteries.
It really is remarkable.
But beyond the potential for H2 production, the research you provided also delves into the nuances of how H2 actually affects mitochondria. And it seems there's a lot more to the story than we initially thought.
Oh, absolutely.
Yay.
We touched on H2's influence on mitochondrial quality control, like mitophagy and
Right.
fusion and fission. But these processes aren't just random events.
They're not.
No, they're tightly regulated by these complex signaling pathways within the cell. It's a delicate dance of molecular interactions
Huh?
and responses to environmental cues.
And H2 seems to be a key player in this intricate dance.
It really does. It seems to have this ability to influence the dance in these subtle but really impactful ways. For instance, some research suggests H2 might modulate a specific stress response pathway in mitochondria called the mitochondrial unfolded protein response.
The MTUPR. That sounds pretty intense.
It is.
Can you explain what that is for our listeners?
Sure. So think of it like a built-in alarm system for the mitochondria.
Okay, an alarm system.
When proteins within the mitochondria start to misfold or get damaged, it triggers this MTUPR. And that sets off this cascade of events aimed at restoring balance, protecting the mitochondria.
So it's a way for the mitochondria to signal that they're in trouble.
Exactly.
And H2 can somehow influence this alarm system.
It's not so much about setting off the alarm as it is about, fine-tuning its sensitivity. H2 seems to have this modulating effect on the MTUPR. In some cases, this might mean making the mitochondria more resilient to stress,
Yeah.
Helping them cope with challenges more effectively.
That sounds like a good thing. But I imagine it's not always that straightforward, is it?
You're right, it's not always black and white.
There are shades of gray, so to speak.
Exactly. You see, the MTUPR, while generally a good thing, a protective mechanism,
Right.
it can have a downside. Prolonged or excessive activation of the MTUPR.
Oh.
It's been linked to, some negative consequences, potentially even contributing to the development of certain cancers.
So in some cases, it might actually help cancer cells survive.
That's the worry. It could help them proliferate, become more aggressive.
Wow, so that adds another layer of complexity to H2's role, doesn't it?
It really does. And it underscores the need for, more in-depth research.
To really understand.
To really understand the intricacies of H2's interactions with these cellular pathways, we need to learn how to harness its beneficial effects.
Right, the good stuff.
While also mitigating any potential risks.
Finding that balance, it seems like it's not just about figuring out if H2 works, but more importantly, how it works.
Absolutely.
And under what specific circumstances. It's a much more nuanced picture than we might have initially imagined.
It really is. And that level of understanding, it requires extensive research, both in the lab and in clinical trials. We need to carefully dissect the different pathways,
Right.
identify the key molecular players, and really observe how these interactions play out in different cell types under different disease conditions.
So there's still a lot of work to be done to fully unravel the mysteries of H2.
Oh, absolutely. We're just scratching the surface.
But what we've learned so far is incredibly exciting.
Right.
This tiny molecule has the potential to unlock major secrets about how our cells function
I agree.
and how we might be able to manipulate those functions to improve human health.
It's a game changer, potentially. H2 research is still in its early stages, but it's already challenging our assumptions.
Turning things upside down.
It is, and opening up all these exciting new avenues for exploration. Who knows what groundbreaking discoveries await us?
This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new appreciation for the complexity of the cellular world.
It is amazing, isn't it?
It really is. And the potential of H2 to play a significant role in, shaping the future of medicine. It's a story worth following closely, that's for sure.
I think so too. And for our listeners out there, I encourage you to stay informed about the latest developments in H2 research.
Yeah.
It's a rapidly advancing field with new discoveries emerging all the time.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next breakthrough.
Exactly. Never stop exploring.
That's right. Keep that scientific curiosity burning bright. Until our next deep dive, happy exploring, everyone.